Hey everybody, we're Shayem and Chris, and this is Fan Team Radio. And we are back kind of late for our British 2024 Grand Prix recap. Chris, what's up? I heard you got a little bit of rain over there in Houston.
Yeah, we got drenched on, the barrel decided to make a turn at the last minute and took our power out for a little bit, and we got a little bit of delays, but we're back. We had I would say an amazing end to the triple header. British Grand Prix was quite the spectacle. It was a little wet, a little dry, and our boy Hamilton is back on top finally.
Yeah, he is.
I know he's your guy. So how do you feel about that?
I cried. I like a grown ass man. I stood there with my arms crossed and cried. And I'm sure that was a feeling that a lot of fans around the world probably shared in. It was nice, man. It was such a relief for me, for my boy, for the team. You can tell throughout the entire stadium. There's a lot of British fans of all different, preferences, whether it's George or Lando and Lewis, and then you can tell everyone kind of just galvanized at the end and really cheered him on, and that was really special. I mean, seeing him and his dad and just hugging his mom and all that, it's a it's an interesting to see fall from grace and then clawing yourself back up. That makes for such a good story, and I'm so glad that it happened to him at his home Grand Prix. Like, I just couldn't be any more proud of Lewis. But yeah, just another reason why this season's shaping out to be one of the best ones that I've seen so far, and from what it sounds like from longtime viewers of F1. They also think that it's probably one of the best seasons that they've seen so far. So we can start there, Chris. Man, I have no problem starting with Mercedes and kind of how they tackled this week's race. But yeah, talk to me from your end. What did you think?
I mean, I'll just echo your statements real quick. Like, yeah, Lewis. I had a buddy over watching, and if he wasn't right next to me when Lewis came over the radio and and was like, "Thanks, guys, so much," and you could tell he was holding back tears. I was like, I looked at Ari, my wife, and I was like, "Oh God, I don't know what to do." I was trying not to cry, but I wanted to bawl. So yeah, I mean, honestly, it's great to see Mercedes back on top. It's been a long time coming. Toto has always hinted at them being able to solve the problem, and then every time that they bring a change or an upgrade, it doesn't really seem to work out. And every time they get a little bit of pace, everybody else seems to surpass them. But they look like the real deal again. We finally have 3 or 4 horse race for the championship. The Mercedes look fast. They look basically competitive with the rest of the pack, as competitive as McLaren and Red Bull. Maybe slightly slower, but George was able to stick it on pole. We had the triple British qualifying podium. With and everyone in the Mercedes engine. So yeah, it looks like Mercedes is going to be performing really well. I think it's anybody's game for this WDC or the championship for drivers. We'll just see how it goes, but yeah, it's just really great to see Mercedes back on top, and I think it's going to come down to like track dependencies and at this point strategy, which we saw that kind of at the end of this race how important strategy is going to be because a couple more laps and Lewis might not have won. Max was charging down; those softs were kind of going off quick, but right calls at the right time and cross the line when it matters, and they were able to take it. So Mercedes is back, and I love it.
Yeah, I mean, when machine and drivers are so equally matched, it does come down to strategy, and that's the kind of F1 that I'll watch all day, even if it does mean that Max wins. If Max wins through that kind of a lens, I'm totally fine with it. I was listening to the Race F1 podcast where they were interviewing James Allison, the chief engineer for Mercedes, back to his old position from CTO, and he had a really measured response to a lot of those questions that the interviewer had. Essentially, like, "Are Mercedes back?" Kind of, those kinds of leading questions. And James Allison was like, essentially, like, "I don't know if we're back or not." I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, "I don't know if we're back or not, but we're definitely making step by step incremental improvements to our car in a way that we weren't able to before." And whether it's you know whether it be the design or kind of the making the car available to both Lewis and Russell's driving styles, those are all things that didn't happen overnight. These evolved over a really grueling 2023 season, and now 2024. They're in a position that I personally did not think that they would be in. I thought this was going to be another shot. Especially with McLaren looking so strong. But if you follow the trajectory of McLaren, remember from last year, Chris, they started off as duds, as complete duds. And they found some sort of stride, whether it's just through internal, just sheer will, or if it's like measured, calculated moves that they tried and tested. But they were able to overcome the hump. And in the back of my mind, I always had confidence in Mercedes being able to accomplish the same. I know in a couple episodes ago, I was really down in the slumps about maybe Lewis never winning again with Mercedes, or again ever, and that was a really sad thought to have. So, I think especially in light of that, him winning the way that he did on home turf was just, it was an incredible feeling to have as a fan. But let me break it down real quick, Chris, because I think there's a lot of really important moments within this race that kind of attributed to Mercedes win. Um, they looked impressive. I think it started off with the two rain cells that happened. The first one being around 5 to 10 minutes, and the latter one being a little bit longer. But Hamilton looked impressive on both of them, especially on the first one where he had gained control on his slicks before everyone else did. And I think that little edge just was, I think said volumes for Hamilton's ability to still put it in on the wet. I think at one point the commentators were commenting that the three top drivers were arguably the best drivers on wets, and that being Hamilton, Norris, and Verstappen. So, they stayed true to their skill set and really put it down there. But I think Hamilton eked it out. I think the fact that Max was able to get such a jump on Lando Norris on the first lap was also contributing to Mercedes' ability to kind of pull away. So, in a sense, Max actually did help keep the barrier up between McLaren and Mercedes, because there was a point in the race where both McLarens gained P1 and P2 positions. In lap 21, Hamilton decides to not leave his slicks to stay on it. He said that there is enough dry spots on the track for him to take advantage of. In lap 21, Leclerc, Ocon, Perez, they all pit for inchers, and he kind of just stays out there, right? So what you saw was essentially teams at the back of the pack were kind of putting on those inchers while everyone up in the front stayed on slicks. And when you have a scenario like that, I think, Hamilton just really stuck to his guns. They double stacked in lap 27. Verstappen and Sainz came in for inchers. Piastri was actually zero point 0.3 seconds behind Norris, so was very close up on Norris's back. Verstappen was 27 seconds behind Russell in P5, and then they McLaren made the grave decision to pit Norris and not pit Piastri. They left Piastri out there on mediums, so he was able to get P1 for a small amount of time. Mercedes double stacked. It wasn't the most impressive. I think it was a little over 3 seconds per, but they're very good at double stacking, especially from the Valtteri days. So they were able to, it wasn't the cleanest. It wasn't sub two, but it was good enough. And I think that's all that you needed in this race. Unfortunately, Russell retires his car in lap 34 due to water system issues, which really sucked. I think if Russell was out there, I think he could have potentially been the winner. I think Hamilton probably had a little bit more skill set on the wets to beat even Russell outright this week. And then lap 39, Hamilton passes Norris finally. Again, Norris finally stays out for probably one lap too long to come back off the inters and onto his softs. By which time, Hamilton's already kind of on his mediums and off to the races, and already has had time to get those tires to warm up. Lap 37, things start drying down. Norris almost spins out, and Hamilton's able to kind of take advantage of all those little slip ups, no pun intended. In lap 39, or sorry, lap 38, Piastri goes to mediums finally from the P5 position. And then Hamilton, again, he pits for softs and Verstappen pits for hards. And that stays consistent throughout the rest of the race where, Verstappen makes some gains, but, Hamilton just has enough on those tires to be able to preserve them through the 52 laps. In lap 39, Norris finally pits for softs, and Hamilton kind of pit, just completely like goes past him, and c'est la vie at that point. I think strategy and pit stops were incredibly important for this week's race, especially given the two rain cells that came in and the unpredictability, I guess, for lack of better words, in how intense the rain was going to be. Because there's also the argument that should we go into wets, and if they did that, the strategy wouldn't have worked the same way. So going onto inners, going back onto the slicks when as soon as it dried up, leaving Lewis out there on slicks to kind of manage the race as much as he could in the first rain cell. I thought very gutsy, but you take the word of a 7-time world champion, and just hope to God he knows what he's talking about, and he put it out there, man. Um, Great race for Mercedes. Whether they can repeat this or not, left to be seen. I think they do pretty well when it comes to race strategy. They're not as good as Red Bull is in their premiere, but I think they're consistent enough to keep this kind of streak rolling. Now, will Hamilton have the advantage of rain all the time? Probably not. But I am curious to see what a regular dry race would look like with the same cast of folks in the same cars. What stood out to you the most, Chris, in the Mercedes kind of the Mercedes strategy and their race? What do you think? What do you think worked best for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think just overall, like, great breakdown that his strategy played the biggest part in this race. And like you said, that Hamilton has that 7-time WDC experience, and he was the one who made the call that he was able to stay out for that extra lap or two and take advantage before he switched over to inters. Really, and then also was able to do the changeover a lap before Norris, which gave him a huge advantage and let him come out in P1. I mean, strategy was the name of the game here, just all around. I mean, the like Oscar, he lost more time staying out on that double stack than he finished the race behind the leader.
Yeah.
So if they double stack, Oscar Piastri might have been able to win this race. And we saw the huge difference in Verstappen's pace at the end there. And on the flip side of that, and we'll talk more about him in a minute. We saw what flipping on Inter's early was a disaster from like the Perez standpoint,
And
and
Leclerc standpoint.
yeah, Leclerc and Joe, they all put on Inters on lap 19, and they shredded them, and they basically, I think they all went 2 laps down, which was like no coming back from that at that point.
Yeah.
So it was just like at that point, I don't know why sometimes these guys don't retire the car. There must be, maybe there's a safety car and they can unlap themselves twice. I don't know, but you know, we showed that making the wrong call at the wrong time is either devastating or masterful. And, like the announcer said, you said that, these guys who have the experience in the wet and then they have the experience at the top of the teams and they've been in these situations before. Those are the guys who get these advantages. I couldn't comprehend why McLaren wouldn't double stack. I mean, I know Piastri was close, but if you trust your guys, I mean, McLaren has the pit stop records. They have those 1.8 seconds. They could try to get it as fast as possible, and I think it was worth the risk. But ultimately, it was an amazing race, and strategy paid off for Mercedes. Like you said, Russell might have had an amazing shot if he didn't have to retire the car. But I'm not too sad about that because I'd rather have Ham on that top step. It was just too amazing of a moment to see. So, but yeah,
Yeah,
I
no. I mean, since we're already talking about McLaren, let's pivot there because I think there's a big storyline there too in how strategy worked against them essentially in this race. They let this one go. In my opinion, I think they would have both been P1, P2. Quite honestly, if they were out there with the right strategy, especially given the fact that their pit crew has had a decent amount of success in recent years and putting in really fast pit stops. Norris actually overshot his pit area by probably like I think a meter or so, which probably added a couple of seconds onto the pit crew's ability to change out his tires, and a couple other just mishaps from Norris. In lap 37, things are drying up. I think Norris is still on his inters, and he almost spins out, and then gives Hamilton a chance to gain gain time on him. He's probably 1.7 seconds behind Norris in P2, and then when that slip up happens, Hamilton just like takes full advantage of it. Uh, I think in lap 27 is kind of where a lot of this starts, right? They leave Piastri out. Mercedes has a decent double stack, which is good enough to get them back out there and take advantage of both McLarens. Norris is told to box again. If if he would have just been able to kind of stay consistent with that set of tires and not mess up too much, I think there might have been an argument that Norris could have been P1 throughout the entire race. It just didn't happen. And then lap 38, Piastri finally they put him on mediums in while he's in P5. And because the front of the pack was so tightly grouped together, coming in from P5 was a tough. Sainz couldn't make a single pass. I feel like this as soon as he got to P5, P6, he really couldn't do a whole lot else to get. And he's actually historically been a really good driver on the wet. So I think it was just one of those things where the best of the best kind of shined this past week. Um, and then in lap 46, Verstappen somehow gets 1 second behind Norris, and by lap 48, he's overtaking Norris. So there's a lot and I think Max is on hards for the second half. So they they essentially were like, we're not going to need to pit again. Just warm up these tires and go chase after McLaren. Out of Max's just sheer talent, he was able to catch up to Norris. I really think McLaren lost this one. That's just my opinion. But and as a Mercedes fanboy, it's hard to admit to it, but I do think that McLaren had a slight more pace than Mercedes. However, in the high speed turns, which Silverstone has a bunch of, Mercedes looked really good. They looked very good, especially off the get go, where Hamilton was just pretty much riding Russell's back throughout those the I don't know, they have like weird names like Brooklyn and shit like that.
Maggots and Beckett's,
Yeah,
baby.
Maggis and Beckett's like they have some weird ass names, but does this that was one of Mercedes' big issues was high speed cornering. They just weren't able to maintain that. So that was a good sign to see for Mercedes, but McLaren, I just think they had a big mishap throughout their entire strategy this race. What do you have to say about McLaren? Do you think this is going to be something that they're going to be able to recover from going into what is it, Hungary next week?
Yeah, I mean, I think McLaren is going to use. I mean, not intentionally, but they're going to use this season as like cutting their teeth and learning how to be front runners. I mean, when it was Lando and Danny Rick, they were fighting basically at the back the whole time, and like you said earlier last season, they were basically in no man's land until later stages of the season. So I think there's just sort of figuring out the little nuances of things that they're going to have to change and do to win races and be at the top, unless it's just super dominant. Lando has shown from like Sochi, 2021, all the way to now that in key pivotal moments he'll make the wrong strategy call on the fly. Like last race where the race before where he wanted to hunt down Verstappen and that ultimately cost him the race, and then led to the crash with Max. and the decision to pit a lap later than Hamilton, and just things like that. And also, you could see how hard Lando is taking this after these races. He's letting it get to him a little too much. Like, he's basically not accepting the fact that they're at the top, that they're competing for wins. They just need to adjust in a little bit. If you look at guys like Max or Lewis, they're like, we just need to go back. We need to understand. And there was like that shot of Lando just like hand on or head on the table, just like
Yeah.
crying. And it's like, listen, man, you have everything in the world going for you right now. And I know maybe you threw it away, but there's 23 races and 24 races next year. Like, get your shit together, work with the team. And you just gotta, they've he's had so much better luck than Oscar. Oscar has been screwed over 4 or 5 times this year. He should have probably won a race already too. So I think McLaren just needs to fix a little bit of issues, and they're going to be a dominant team. And it's going to be really interesting to see how the rest of the season sort of plays out. Um, I think Max is getting exactly what I mentioned a couple of episodes ago in last episode, where we have a Lando win, we have a Lewis win, occasionally we'll throw a Ferrari win in there, but Max is consistently finishing at the top, and I think he'll end up keeping that WDC because we're not going to have a consistent second or first place opposite. It's always going to be a Mercedes or a McLaren or a Ferrari. So I think Max is going to really benefit from that. But it'll be really interesting to see who the de facto second team is and ultimately how that leads into next season, because this season is a banger and I think next one's going to be just as good.
Yeah, I think so too. I have high hopes for 2025 and the rest of 2024. But yeah, Max seems like he has a lock on the WDC still, even though I think because there's several different winners vying for P2, it's really cannibalizing their any one driver's ability to overtake Max in the WDC. But they are in a tough position for the Constructors Cup, and that is because of one said Sergio Perez, aka Checo, aka tire whisperer from a past lifetime. Because now it seems like this guy is absolutely gonna rock the boat in the worst ways possible, and essentially be the main reason if they do lose the constructors title is going to be because of Sergio Perez. It's a hard burden to take on, but you are still arguably in one of the best cars in Formula One. I would still say Red Bull has the best car in Formula One, even though their margins of greatness isn't as great as it was last year. Let's talk about RB. There's a lot of conversations once you look past like the kind of shining thing that is Lewis winning at the British Grand Prix. After you kind of look past even the luster that McLaren has at the moment, right? Even though Norris is down on himself, they are still in a very very good strong standing in the constructors championship. Um, when you look past all that, there is the sludge underbelly of F1 that's constantly revolving, and the it's a door that Sergio's trapped in right now, right? There, we talked about this a little bit, and I guess we'll talk about it again. It's the clauses that are in his 2 year contract or his 1+1 contract. Helmut Marko has been pretty vocal about Sergio's kind of performance since 2 years ago almost now, and he's still a skeptic, and Checo's not making that decision any easier or any harder for Helmet and for Christian. But now they're the what do they do now, right? Do they just stick with Perez through the rest of the season? If his performance persists like this, then they are going to be in jeopardy of losing the Constructors Cup. Or do they bring in Danny Rick for the tail end of the season and just kind of give him, a go? I don't think his performance has been very uh, indicative of success, but it doesn't seem like Christian wants to move forward with Yuki at all. And from what I've heard and reports of Liam Lawson's recent testings, they weren't incredibly blown away by him in the Red Bull car. So I guess it just leaves a question open. What does Red Bull do now to ensure they can secure a constructors championship because Max can't be in both cars. You know, that's the one thing that he can't do.
Well, they haven't tried it yet. Maybe he can.
That'd be
But
badass if they just like connected one Red Bull car to the other and had Max like stand in the middle,
yeah, that would be
just like
amazing.
drive with both hands.
Or just put him in a sim and he'll just drive both at the same time. He'll just flip a switch.
Yeah,
But yeah, no, like listen, Sergio has, for whatever reason, he, whether it's mental or physical, age, or whatever's happening, there's obviously something going on. Like 4 or 5 races in a row, plus tons of races last season, and even earlier this season of just not being able to be up to standard is like not something. I'm actually surprised that Red Bull is letting it go this long. We saw how strict that they were with Gasly and with Albon, and cutting them mid-season and stuff like that. I'm surprised that someone as underperforming, maybe he is getting tons and tons of sponsor and merch money, and that's more valuable to them. But at some point, the loss in constructors and the loss in just pride and dignity is going to be too much of Sergio just super underperforming. And I think that if he doesn't score points or if he doesn't make Q3 or whatever it is in Hungary, that they're going to really have a tough decision. But maybe Carlos Sainz put the master class of waiting the F1 grid out to the
Jesus,
test.
yeah. His waiting period has gone through its own narrative.
And I think this is why. I think he's like, there's still decisions to be made, and these guys and the other teams, like he's like, listen, I'm either going to end up at a bottom midfield team that has no chance of scoring points or being anywhere up there, and I'll either land at one of those teams in any case. So he's like, what does it matter if I end up at Williams, or if I end up at Alpine, or if I end up at Alfa Romeo / Audi? Like, what does it matter? They're all going to be the same, at least for year one. So I might as well wait it out, see if something happens with Mercedes, see if something happens with Red Bull. And if not, I'll just sign for whoever's left. Now, there's probably a small chance that he misses out, but I doubt it. So maybe it's a masterclass. Maybe it's a maybe he's going to pull one over, and maybe he knows that Liam didn't test well and that Danny Rick is like a terrible choice for the seat, and he'll get that Red Bull seat. Who knows? But that's what I've wanted from day one. I don't know if Max wants it though, just because Carlos maybe can compete with him.
I
But
mean, so far I haven't heard any complaints from Max about Checo. Like that, I think that should be stated. I don't think that gets stated enough. So far, he hasn't said a damn thing about Checo. He hasn't indicated anything towards him. I think Max is happy putting everything on his own shoulders, and there really is no other team that unilaterally is behind one specific driver. Probably Aston Martin and Lance Stroll, but that's a different kind of story. I think there was a couple of podcasts I listened to earlier this week about that actually highlighted Max's diplomatic kind of stance between his dad and Christian Horner, who are kind of at odds right now. I think Jost Verstappen is kind of looking long term into what the 2025-2026 narrative is going to look like, and because Newey's not going to be. Oh, just side note, the RB17 that Newey made, fucking just what a beautiful car. $6 million, absolutely worth it. Hats off to Adrian Newey.
when
But
when when they pulled the veil back,
yeah,
I was like, I got to find a way to get this car at some point in my life. Like that was it, like that color too, but yeah,
it
just
made
the
me really want a Red Bull.
I would do anything for that. Like that was a beautiful car, and
It's a
like the
beautiful car.
downforce ratio on that car is insane. Like I want to see that car on track really bad.
Yeah, it's a pure track car. It's like not a road car at all. I fucking love it. But back to our regular scheduled programming. Yeah, Checo. I think it was a measured, not measured, but like a calculated decision from the Red Bull part. I don't think Red Bull's stupid enough to, or Red Bull management is not stupid enough to be like, we're going to just give you all out 2 year deal with no strings attached. I think they're going to start pulling at those strings. I think you're right. After Hungary, if he has a similar performance, it's just, I think after Mexico last year, was probably when things started to maybe not completely go downhill, but definitely could see the trend of going downhill and plateauing and going downhill for Checo. So there's a certain point that I guess you can keep up with Max, but then once you kind of falter consecutively, it's really hard to bring yourself back from there. I think Checo has some mental fortitude to be able to bring it back, but it's super tough, man. We've seen this story kind of impact the way that Danny Rick drove in subsequent teams. Pierre Gasly, he ended up winning a race with Alfa Romeo, AlphaTauri, but then went straight to Alpine, and now he's kind of in a funk. Alex Albon, showed some streaky promises at Williams, and now he's in a funk. It's just I think that seat leaves a mark on whoever's in it, especially when Max Verstappen is the D1 driver there. What do they do from here on out? I guess Signs is going to be the best play that you can make. That would be a really exciting lineup to see, especially given how strong Ferrari is going to be next year, how McLaren is right now, how strong Mercedes could be if they bring on like a Kimi Antonelli and he just absolutely wipes the floor with the veterans. Um, these are all exciting storylines, by the way. I think Carlos going into Red Bull does way more for Red Bull's, I guess, like iconography or social kind of clout than Perez ever could. Even if like Sainz doesn't bring all that money, he's going to be able to bring back a confidence within Red Bull that they're slowly losing, and you can kind of see that. Adrian's leaving next year. They're losing races. Max seems oddly complacent, in the post drivers like interview, kind of like when they're in the room together, the winners circle room, whatever you want to call it. You could see the little bit of banter between Max and Lewis, and Lando just like pretty much zoned out. He's just like, I don't even want to talk about this. So I guess again, the revolving door is probably not just for Perez, but the revolving door probably also has to, you could use the same metaphor for drivers. Uh, Emotional, kind of responses. I think if this was a year or two ago, Max would have been. I think he would have been completely furious. But I don't know, something about his calm demeanor and his complacency maybe indicates to me that him and Jose are having conversations, like real conversations about potential moves away from Red Bull, especially going into 2026 when Mercedes is kind of deemed to have a really good powertrain package. But again, we're just speculating here, and we're speculating on the fly. But every week that a race happens, I feel like Checo's, you know, the promise of Checo staying at Red Bull either comes down super drastically or goes up super drastically. Because if the dude gets P2 next race in Hungary, we're gonna be like, oh yeah, he's back in good standings.
I mean, I don't know if that's possible at the moment. Like you mentioned, ever since Mexico, it almost feels for me like it's desperation. Like
Oh,
he
100%.
want yeah, it's just like he's trying too hard in the wrong moments, which leads to screw ups. I mean, this is a guy who ended up in the gravel on a wet track and got beached, and then like comes over the radio and asks to be pushed back on track, which he knows 100% is against the rule book. But it's like I just like he knows he's in trouble. He
Yeah.
knows his career is on the line, and he's just like anything to fix it. And so I just think that I think in a world where Mercedes is struggling and McLaren is struggling and Ferrari is struggling, Checo is able to shine a little bit and get those P2s and stuff occasionally. I don't think with these other teams that are being competitive, I don't think he has a shot at scoring a podium at the moment, unless there's just some really big screw ups or he's able to put it on pole somehow and strategy is just really good. But otherwise, I think all that competition are in good cars now, and they're all just better drivers than him. And I think that's really shining through at the moment. I mean, Checo, last year they were in the RB19. That car was godlike, and he was able to perform a little bit better. But now the competition is much more fierce, and I just don't think for the rest of the season he's going to have very many good showings. And his racecraft isn't really good lately either. He's like scared of passing in correct ways, otherwise he's going to crash the car. And I don't know. I think the time is done for Checo. It just depends on the politics and the financials of it, how it really breaks down. But I would like to see Carlos there, but regarding what you said about Max, honestly, I don't think Max cares about all these things that other people care about. He knows he's the best. He's accomplished everything that he wants to accomplish, and I think he's just complacent because he's like, whatever. Like the sport's become something I don't really want it to be anymore, and I'm gonna drive while I'm winning, and when it stops, I'm done. So I think he wants to do other things in racing. He wants to own his own team. He wants to like go for the triple crown one day potentially. So I think maybe he's just complacent because he's complacent. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, I do see a massive difference in Max from last year, like yelling over the radio, getting mad at the end of races to just like, I'm not really bothered by it. I'm not going to lose sleep. Going to go home, race my sim, and have a good night. It's
Yeah,
very different.
it's and I'm looking at the sector timings that you posted here, Chris, about Perez and against everyone else. It's not that far off, you know. Quite honestly, he's trending better than other drivers across sectors 1, 2, and 3. It's the qualifying that puts him in a hole that he can't get himself out of. You know, I think wherever Perez ends up in qualifying, it's very indicative of the performance that he's going to put up on that Sunday. You know, yeah, he had a four stop strategy, probably the most inefficient. I think Ocon and Joe were the only two others that had a four stop strategy. Not the company you want to be in.
Yeah, fully agree.
All right, let's talk about our winners, losers, and hot seats here. I think we got some meat on the bone here for this week since there was a lot of competition. So why don't you start us off, Chris?
Yeah, I mean, the obvious choice for both of us is going to be Lewis Hamilton. We kind
Hmm.
of already broke it down a little bit at the beginning, but watching him with the flag around him, kissing the trophy, and just in pure joy with his both his mom and dad there and everything we already talked about was just such a great moment. I think it was great not only for him and for Sadie's, but for the sport in general. I think we got our sixth winner of the season,
Yep,
and it's just it's just beginning. Like it feels like I know we're about to head into kind of the summer break, but it's
it's still a long season left, man.
yeah, it's a long season left. We've got a lot of great racing, and Lewis has already come out and said that their next upgrade is going to put them even further ahead. And it's like imagine if we're getting Mercedes 1-2s for the rest of the season. Like, oh my god, like
Dude, I'd
back to 2021 Abu Dhabi, the
I'd lose my
final.
shit. I'd
Like,
lose my shit, man. I'd probably cash in a lot of money to go to a couple of races this year, not just one or two, but probably like four.
I mean,
Yeah,
hundred percent.
I'd be all over it.
Like if we go into Abu Dhabi again, tied on points or whatnot, it's like
We're going, Chris.
going,
We're fucking going, bro. Hella,
fucking going.
we're
But
fucking
yeah,
going.
and then the only other person I have on there because I'm going to let you fill it out is freaking Hannah Schmidt from Red Bull Racing. This woman is the smartest race strategist ever. Like everyone, I was watching like the Reddit comments like live in the race and other people and we were just like, what are they doing putting Max on hards? Like, it's a wet track. You want soft tires, they're going to heat up faster. And everyone's just like, what are you doing? We almost thought it was a mistake. And lo and behold, here he comes charging down the field at the end. Now, I don't think Max had a new set of mediums, otherwise, it potentially might have been mediums, but they knew for a fact that soft was not the answer, that they would go off too fast to finish the race on, and that they were going to be so much faster for the last 4 or 5 laps, which is completely accurate. And I don't think anybody else was in that ball game except for Piastri, who went on mediums. But again, another decision that we talked about with Lando, he put on the soft to cover Lewis and match him, and he wanted to be as quick as him. If he had put on the mediums, he might have won the race. But
Yeah, I think it's just a really great decision making on the fly by Hannah, you know, and just at least from my point of view and what I was able to observe. But I think she outweighed the pros and cons of putting hards on and avoiding or reducing the need for Max to come in for any more pit stops after that, while also seeing the benefits of warming up those hard tires and keeping them warm throughout the rest of the race when they knew that there were no more rain cells coming in. I think that was just a really just astute decision making on her behalf and just really analyzing the risks and benefits there on the fly. It's incredibly impressive. I absolutely agree with you that she kind of was instrumental in Max's ability to get back in the race, get back into P2, and get a position that I I knew that he could do it, but it was just what was going to be the I guess the kicker, the harbinger of that win, and it definitely was, Hannah. A couple other winners that I have. I mean, I have Lewis Hamilton. Love that guy to death. So happy for him. But I got my other guy, Nico Hulkenberg. My man,
Ooh.
my man is just fucking putting. I'm picking up everything he's putting down, man. Like fucking P6 in race classification, P6 in qualifying, just an absolute stud, in the rain. Like he's just a hoss, dude. I fucking just I love that guy, man. He did so well this past week, and it was so understated by all the excitement that was happening up front. But man, I got to call that guy out. He was just Audi's getting a good one, man, and Haas should have kept his ass. I would have done whatever I could have kept Hulkenberg.
Uh, Audie, hear me right now. Give this man a car for a podium, or I'm coming after you. Like seriously, I'll never buy an Audi ever. I want this man in a car. Like, look at his speed. He's doing this in a Haas. I want to see this guy on the podium. It's gonna be that Lewis moment, breaking the 300 curse. I will cry when Nico stands on the podium for the first
Yeah,
time.
that would be a really special moment when Nico Hulkenberg, after what is like fucking like 10, 12 seasons, he's been in F1 for a long
And
time.
and over two or three instances of taking breaks from the sport and coming back,
Yeah,
like would be an amazing story.
yeah, absolutely. A couple others that I have on the winner circle. These are teams. So Aston Martin really showed up. This week. They've been pretty dull throughout the whole season, but they're able to pick up 10 points. Or sorry, 12 points across Fernando. No. Yeah, they picked up 10 points. So Lance Stroll came in P7, Fernando came in P8. So they both were able to get points. Both were able to keep their cars on track, especially Lance Stroll. So a good standing from Aston Martin. Is that indicative of anything throughout the rest of this year? I don't know. It could have just been a fluke, but it was a good fluke. And the last winner that I have in my circle this week was Williams. Believe it or not, Alex Albon came in with 2 points, came in at P9, and then our best friend Logan Sargent came in P11, the highest that he's ever been. Still not a point, but came in P11. That's something. And I'm not sure if that's something that is by merit or if that's because everyone behind him just sucked that bad. But a couple of outstanding names that were behind him were one Charles Leclerc, one Esteban Ocon, and one Sergio Perez. So go figure.
Yeah, I mean Charles Leclerc. We'll talk about him on the losers in a second, but that man had a horrid of
Let's
a
just
race.
talk about him now. Let's just start there. Let's start our losers conversation already. Let's not extend this out more than it needs to
Yeah,
be.
I mean, what movie is that where they're like, why don't we just save some time? Like where they're gambling is like, why don't we just save some time and you can give me half your money now? We'll go out back, I'll kick you in the nuts, and we'll call it a day. Like that's how I felt about Charles Leclerc. I mean, I
What
I
movies are
don't
you watching?
I it's like what a Vegas vacation. I can't remember, but
Okay,
I
it's a National Lampoon movie.
Lampoon. Yeah, that's right. I think that's what that is. Chevy Chase, but Charles Leclerc. I mean, the guy wins Monaco. He's on a high. That new sweet HP deal and everything, and you're like, oh man, Ferrari's back. I can't wait for Lewis to get to this team. And then all of a sudden, ever since then, it's just been downhill from there. And he's just had one bad luck race after another. I mean, I can't remember all the things that kind of happened to him at the beginning there, but you know, putting on those inters, getting lapped twice. Man's just having a rough time, and you can see it in his in his face and his
Man
eyes.
sold his soul for that Monaco win. This is
Yeah,
the fallout of that.
maybe he's taking the Monaco curse for the rest of the season. But he's probably gladfully doing it too. But it's probably hard on the guy. And then, I have both McLarens on here. I have Norris and Piastri. Piastri just because he keeps getting screwed over. He should have been double stacked. Probably would have had a podium, potentially fighting for the win. And then Norris just from the decision making and his lack of being able to just fine tune it for that win as well. Like he, a couple decisions different, and either one of those guys could have been on the top step. I'm glad it wasn't because I'm happy for Lewis, but these guys just have a few things that led them to obviously finish P3 P4, but that's a big difference when it should have been P1 P2. And you have to fix those things up. So I think Piastri just kind of got screwed over by the team a little bit. Made the right call at the end to go on those mediums, but Norris probably could have done a little bit better and not been passed by Max. So, and he needs stop putting your head down, man. You're a good driver. Go out there and get it.
Yeah, I think the Charles Leclerc effect has taken over Norris's subconscious right now. So yeah, I also have both McLarens in the losers circle. I think you touched on pretty much all the reasons that they deserve to be there this week. Charles Leclerc as well. Two others that I added on there is George Russell. Again, a potential P1 position. Luckily, his teammate won it. I mean, depends on who you ask, but luckily, Lewis was there to collect the points and optimize on that. But yeah, a water system issue during the rain, like what the fuck is that? So I was actually like, is there a conspiracy against Russell now? But
Mm.
there wasn't. It was just sheer dumb luck. And in Alpine, don't know where the hell they were this year. This week, Pierre Gasly literally started the race by not starting the race. They, I guess they thought like we are so far back from changing gearbox because he was supposed to start from pit lane, due to all the changes that they made to his car. And then when the race started, he did formation lap, I think, and then just like that was it. That's all he could get done. So, Pierre Gasly didn't even finish, and then Esteban Ocon came in at P16. This dude was behind Valtteri Bottas, Danny Ricciardo, Logan Sargent. It's just was not a race that I would look back on with kind eyes if I was Alpine. Probably a race that they want to forget. He was 2 laps behind the race leader. So yeah, Esteban Ocon didn't do great. Pierre Gasly, we don't even know because he didn't get to start. Yeah, let's talk hot seats because we talked about this ad nauseum already, but let's just double down on what we already know. Perez is in both of our hot seats. I F1's a weird sport in that you can control your destiny a little bit longer than you could in a team sport like the NBA or NFL, where if if your opponents win an X amount of games at a certain point in the regular season, you're you're probably out. You don't control your destiny anymore. So there's a lot of deciding factors that are kind of just outside of your control. In F1, it seems like, especially within Red Bull, you can kind of skirt that a little bit, and I think now Sergio is hitting that point where he can no longer really control his destiny unless he wins a couple of races this year and then consistently comes in the podiums. This might be the last year that Sergio Perez spends in Red Bull, even though he has that second year clause on his contract. I think the powers that be, between Christian and Helmut Marko, even though they're at odds with each other when it comes to drivers, I think they can even come to an agreement on something like poor week over week performances from Perez. So he's in my hot seat. It looks like he's in yours also. Anything you want to add on Perez?
Nope. I think unless those clauses aren't there, which I'm sure they are,
They're
he's definitely
100%
in. Yeah,
Yeah,
100%.
that's why he was asking them if they can bring him back onto the track during qualifying.
Yeah, I think decisions will be made. It's just dependent on whether it's going to be mid season or next year. I think I think not only just like winning a race or like performing well, but I think consistently doing it for the rest of this year is going to be needed for him to continue.
They
I
also have
think
this guy Isaac Hadjar in their F2 team, and I mean he's I think he's number one right now in the F2 series. But you know, can they bring
he
him
can.
into to AlphaTauri, boost up Yuki into Red Bull, and then have Logan Sargent and Isaac Hadjar be like the AlphaTauri team? Like, is that or V Carb, what the fuck you want to call it? Like they're like I don't know when they lost sight of V Carb being like the incubator for younger drivers. And Helmut Marko is like railing against all these accusations that they've gone away from that. He's like, nah, like we haven't. We're still doing the same. It's like, no, you're not, dude. You have a stable of drivers. You guys are always constantly looking for the next WDC, but like when you have that in place, the strategy should be to have a very secure, strong driver in P2. I think Mercedes nailed it with the by keeping Valtteri as long as they did, and they kept him. It's cruel, it is cruel to put someone on a 1 to 1 contract. It is rough, but Valtteri, that's what kept him going. I feel like in a certain way, it was depressing to see, especially when you put it through the lens of a docu series like Drive to Survive, because there was a Valtteri sad moment almost in every episode. But you see what happens when you give someone security when they haven't fully deserved it yet, and I think that's going to be what Red Bull's going to reel back from this season, and maybe go back to their old ways, be a little bit more cutthroat. But another person on my hot seat is Joe Guan Yu. I think it's going to be his last couple of races at Sauber. I don't think another team's going to want to pick him up after just kind of his performance. It's been very lackluster. He's a nice guy from what I hear, but again, nice guys don't really. Teams would probably take Esteban Ocon before they take Joe Guan Yu, because even though Esteban's hard to get along with, he just has that raw talent that Joe might be missing out on. So yeah, Joe came in last place, before George Russell and Pierre, who didn't get to finish or even start, and that's it's kind of embarrassing. I don't think that it instills confidence in other teams. It's not even just a car thing, because Valtteri was able to get into P15. It really is like the combination of the driver and the car, and it looks really bleak for Joe. I think it's going to be, Kick Sauber. I'm not saying Kick Sauber is going to get rid of him midway through the season, because they're not in that position of luxury like other teams are. But I think they're not going to renew his contract.
Yeah, I fully agree. I mean, the rumor is that they offered like 30 million for the hot seat, and they're very clearly not going to be taking him. And so, at some point, money is money, and it's important to these teams. But at some point, everyone there, hopefully, is there to win races and potentially win championships. And you can't do that if you just have pay drivers who aren't as competitive. And I agree with you. I think Joe's a great guy, but he's obviously involved in much more than just racing. And if you want someone to improve and potentially get podiums and wins, you want someone dedicated to the sport and to the craft. And I just think he's a capable driver that will probably never get any better. We've seen that over 3 to 4 years. So
Yeah.
I think he's done in F1, but hopefully my boy Valtteri stays in. I know I've said that every episode, but I'm just hoping for it.
Yeah. Well, we got a couple of cool races to look forward to. It's going to be Hungary next week on Sunday. It's going to be at 8 a.m. local time, barring any weird weather situation in Texas that takes away electricity from us. We will be able to cover that hopefully on that following Monday on the 22nd. And then right after that, we're going to be in Belgium. Not us, but someone's going to be in Belgium for the race on the 28th. After that, I think we go into a slight summer break. So doubleheader coming up. I'm looking forward to it. Who you got for next race?
Yeah, I mean, man, it's gonna be so. It's hard to do predictions now when before it was just like, yeah, max, 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 max. Now Who knows? Um, you know, I I'm gonna put Oscar on the top step. I want Oscar to win his first race, and it's his home race. So I'm just kidding.
Wait, hungry? Oh, I was just like, wait, what?
He said that he wanted every race. He's gonna make every race his home race.
He's like Drake.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I want to see Oscar Piastri finally have the good strategy and the speed. So we're gonna go Oscar, Lewis, and Verstappen. Wishful thinking.
I'm gonna go with hmm. I'm gonna go a little bold. I'm gonna go Norris in P1. I think he's gonna try to redeem himself in a really confident way. Even though I don't like, I'm not the biggest Norris fan. I think he might pull out a nifty P1. I think Verstappen will come back in at P2, and then I think we'll round it out with George. I think he'll maybe get some poodling done on his own, and break out a P3 spot. So I wouldn't put money on it, but that just goes to show how much more exciting and close the racing has been this year.
Yeah, I think next race is barring any weather conditions there is going to be very indicative of the pecking order maybe for the rest of the season. And if we have a good hard dry race, I think that, and between Hungary and Belgium and Spa, we'll get to see some really good traditional old tracks and see where these people sort of end up. We'll see if Verstappen continues to have issues in qualifying, and where the pace of Mercedes really lies between Red Bull and McLaren. So I'm excited for this doubleheader, and I think it's going to be another great rest of the first split into the summer break. So
Yeah, I'm here for it. You're here for it. Hopefully, everyone that's listening to it is going to be here for it. But until next week, bye, everybody.
get in there, Lewis. Thank you for listening. Shayem and I would love for you to join the Fan Team Radio community. So please like, subscribe, or follow on your platform of choice, and we'll see you next time.